brief note on the MICCR. So the MICCR is a collaboration between the Boston University Rennie Center for Education, Research and Policy, and Mass Inc. to build the capacities of both researchers and district members across the Commonwealth as well as nationally to implement with fidelity college and career readiness initiatives. It's led by Scott Solberg, who will be on our webinar today, as well as Chad D'Entremont of the Rennie Center and Ben Foreman of Mass Inc. The program has been developed in close collaboration with the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, including under the consideration and consultation of Carrie Conaway. So with that, I turn it over to Scott Solberg.
Okay, hello everybody. We're very glad that you were able to join us. The talk today with Nyal, and I think we need to also do the shout out that another real partner in this endeavor for MICCR has been the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, but especially Nyal's area under Keith Westrich's leadership around college and career readiness. And so we're very excited to have a session like this where it just demonstrates the partnership that we have, and we've been able to rely on our state around a number of different pieces of college career readiness, and certainly data is a big one. So, before we get started into the conversation, Nyal, did you want to just introduce yourself a bit and let everybody know who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi, folks. My name is Nyal Fuentes. I've worked at the department for a long time. I noticed some of your names on this list. I've known you probably for years. I work mostly around college access issues, MICCR, dropout prevention, academic support, but also really one of my big pieces is around this EWIS system, which is Early Warning Indicator System, and really getting data into the hands of people who can make great decisions for kids. Real quickly, I'm joined by my friend Leanne Huang, who is the architect behind what the DART is. So hopefully she's going to do a lot of listening and maybe some talking, and when it gets really technical, bail my you-know-what out. So great to be here today.
All right, thanks, Nyal. Thank you both. So, the impetus for this discussion today is that there's a huge amount of data that our state is providing as open access. I have to say, Nyal, it's probably unprecedented. I can't think of any other state that has this much data available for us to use as basically parents and educators and everyone else. The idea of what to do with that data, though, always becomes a key question. And in our work around college career readiness, the question is, what data points do we need in order to coalesce a common framework and a common action plan around improving college and career readiness? And one of the big outcomes and one of the new data points that's emerged in the last decade is college completion rates. Before, we used to have to do this all by calling and saying, did your child get into college? Are they still there? Now we have a national student clearinghouse that provides that data, and we're able to use that as now a barometer of what kind of success our community is having in increasing the number of youth that have access to college. And by college, by the way, we're not talking about 4-year. We're talking about all of it. We're talking about credentialing programs, 2-year programs, 4-year programs, the whole mix. Probably the only thing not listed on this right now is military. I don't know if the National Student Clearinghouse captures that, but it's a smaller percentage in that way. One of the neat things that came about with No Child Left Behind, if there was one nice thing that came about, it was the disaggregating the data so we could see how we're doing by subject populations. And certainly that the state is doing a great job in the data set you're going to see later today, that we can look at college success in relation to the different subgroups. So we may be doing great overall, but how are we doing with our English language learners, our students with disabilities, our low-income youth, and youth of color? So it'll be a nice way to kind of look at that. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to show, just kind of through this, a dashboard. The idea being that this would be the kind of thing that each district or high school, middle school, certainly high school would be probably the more proper one, could create as a way of saying, how are we doing? And so I'm showing you right now one that I created for my school district. The district has reviewed it. They brought in a specialist to look at the data to make sure it was accurate, and it was. And we've been using it. I have a child with a disability, so I'm working with our special ed parent advisory council And our goal was to say, how are our students with disabilities doing in relation to college and career readiness? And in doing so, looking not only, as you'll see in the first piece, not only are we looking at what percentage are graduating or from college, but also what are some of the indicators that are kind of pushing the envelope on that. And Nyal, I want to pause here as you're looking just this first page. This is the kind of, what are some of those data points perhaps we should be thinking about in building a data dashboard? So I've got a couple here, and we'll certainly walk through. But in our case, we were looking at how many completed, but we're also looking at those SAT scores, because it seems like the SAT scores is also one of those barometers of do they have the skills that we call college readiness, the math, the literacy, the science skills to be successful. But now I'll pause there if you want to comment and make any points.
Great. So, a lot of times, just real quickly on the whole use of dashboards and that type of thing, I think there's a tendency to either hide stuff that you want to hide with data or illustrate, really, amplify things that you're doing well at. So I think a lot of times it's going to depend on your district. What do you want to concentrate on? Where are your warts, and then where are your strengths? Again, we found through some of the research around the post-secondary, initial research around the post-secondary early warning indicators, of course, that course taking is big. So if you want to start looking at course taking, certainly MCAS has a relationship to college attendance just because it measures specific skills in English language arts and mathematics. Certainly AP course taking has been very important. SAT has some connection. I think, it depends on where you're applying to college. If you're applying to some more competitive 4 years, they may or may not require that type of testing. So, I think the biggest things we like to talk about here are attendance, behavior, and course taking. Those are three big things that we've been talking about. But it really depends on what your school or district is looking at. What are the things that are most important to them?
And so, just to be clear, you've got an indicator of what percentage of the students are taking the Mass Core, which would be those moving towards a college readiness, right?
Sure. Yeah. So we have Mass Core indicators in the DART, which I'll show you a little bit later. If you want to be more specific about a student, say, passing all their ninth grade courses, we know passing all ninth grade courses is a huge indicator. Students who fail one ninth grade course are 14 times more likely to drop out of high school. So we know those are important. We know students taking math in senior year are important. Science, technology, engineering in senior year is important. So we have all those indicators on the DART, and we'll show you those later. And certainly Mass Core could be a piece of this as well.
That's great. And so the reason we're showing you this is that it's just an example, and it's just kind of showcasing something that doesn't have to be that complicated, and it shouldn't be. And I think what Nyal is saying is the question has to be, what is it that is going to help us as a community have a better understanding of how we're doing, and give us something that we can work on. It's not meant to be an attack. It's not meant to be something that's going to divide our community. We're trying to use it as a way of bringing the community together. And so really, we've got some of you hopefully from the Reach Higher campaign, which is really focusing on building our school counseling profession. And I think that's a great place where this can be housed, that our school counselors can help facilitate and lead, some of these conversations in a way that's not about blame and such. So with that,
Scott,
you've got a general. Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
Scott, I think a real important piece you're putting out here is that you really need to develop an understanding of who your audience is for this information. If this is written specifically, like this report looks like it's really targeted, it's a CPAC, giving information about what, these different comparisons look like. You can do all sorts of comparisons in DART and any other situation. But again, thinking about this out, is it parents? You're going to have to, modify your information in a particular way. I find this particular report dashboard you did here very accessible to parents, to kind of your civic leaders, say if you have a mayor or committee, and to taxpayers in general. You want them to have full information about what's going on. When you're working with educators, sometimes you need to have a little bit more detail in here, but I think it's having foundational knowledge. This is the type of setup that you're really going to be looking at. What indicators you choose is kind of up to you as a district.
Yeah, and I think thank you for bringing that up, because this was definitely designed for the parents to be able to access easily, because it is complicated data. But you're right, as a district, there has to be a different dashboard that they can be using to really take a look at the data in more depth. But also, hopefully, I think our educators need help in learning how to use data as well in their decision making. So it has to be building capacity on both ends.
And I think it's good to have everyone on one point and a foundation to build on.
Yeah. So Nyal, I want you to take it from here. I just wanted to give everybody a sense of there is a dashboard type model we can use. This was just an example. It's publicly accessible. You can certainly use it or make your own. But now the whole goal from this point on is for you, Nyal, to kind of walk us through, introduce us to DART, let us see what's going on with it, and everybody, you've got the chat box down below. It's right at the bottom. We really want to invite you to start asking questions, and at some point, Nyal and I might just stop talking until somebody puts something in the chat box. We want it to be a dialogue, so we can't really help facilitate this unless you really ask the questions that you're most interested in. So, Nyal, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Fantastic. So DART is one of our data tools that we have at the department. Again, thank you for letting us talk about this. We've gone, many of you might have heard me speak about this before. We go all over the Commonwealth trying to sell this free tool for people to use. And we think it's a good way to kind of cut up data and really use it well. We at the department have been, kind of trying to be as transparent as possible in data usage. Collecting data for data's sake is really no good. It's like we don't want to just put up, billboards. We just don't want things to be newspaper headlines. We want to put information into the hands of people who are making decisions. And sometimes those decisions might be those people that are teachers, that are counselors, that are administrators, and really to have as much information as they possibly can in a usable fashion. A lot of times this information is like drinking out of a fire hose. There's just too much. Again, people use data for their own uses. There's local data that's very powerful that needs to be partnered with the data that we're, the quantitative data that we're showing here. We don't know about kids who live in a particular zip code. We don't know about their neighbors. We don't know which kids are foster kids. We do have a little bit of information on what kids are homeless, drug use, a lot of different things. That schools are the places that they have information. And we know that districts need to triangulate all this information that we're giving them with information that they have locally. And ultimately, as I often like to say, N equals 1. It's all about that kid that's in front of you. It's all about your own child, the student you're working with. So we don't want to get that lost in the conversation. That being said, just quickly a couple different data sources that we have. School profiles is, and I put the links up here, and again, this is available in the Dropbox so you can look at this information itself. This is the most basic way to look at information. You can find all sorts of information about accountability, around assessment, around grad rates, around demographics, discipline data, a lot of information there. There's one place to look. The biggest place to look if you are a school person, and this is Edwin Analytics, and this provides, you need to have certain access given to you by a school district or your school. This includes the early warning indicator system. So in my shop, so to speak, or not necessarily my shop, but things I work on really closely, is this early warning indicator system that can go all the way down to the student level, and post-secondary readiness and success reports. Scott was talking a little earlier about college completion and really having that data available. In the post-secondary readiness and success reports, we have what are called those National Student Clearinghouse data that you can see where kids are going, kind of the different pieces that have them go there, all sorts of information that's available. Again, Edwin Analytics is only available to schools and districts. So the focus of today is our Success After High School DART, and this really is a great tool. Hopefully you'll be able to download your own tool. It's on the right-hand side. It's a very large file, but this really is a tool that was developed by Leanne, leading a team of others to really look at mostly college readiness, but some career readiness data. And as we start to gather more career readiness data, this is where we'll have it available. Christine, I'll take your question in 1 second. I think I might answer it. So what is the DART? We want to take this fire hose of information and turn it into something that was valuable and easily consumable. It provides a snapshot, so a lot of times it's not real-time data necessarily. It's updated 2 to 3 times a year. Once we get new data, we try to pump in as much information here as possible. Some of this information drags. We do not have information about, for example, 16-month college enrollment until a long time after that actually happens, and that's just the nature of the data sets. We just didn't want to sit it in-house, just sitting there in a file, us playing around with it, so we wanted to get it out to everyone. When I show this to you, you're going to really see that it shows trends over years. It views your school and district data in charts that are easy to interpret, and when you look at this, it's easy to, say, cut your particular district out and show it right to your school committee, or show it right to your staff, or even put it right onto, for example, Scott's example of of the dashboard piece. It allows you to look at districts and how much progress you're making. Again, that's the idea of looking at this longitudinal piece over several years. And you can also, and this is something unique to this tool, find comparable districts and schools based on demographics. It's difficult to compare somewhere like Monomoy High School to Burke High School in Boston. So we wanted to look at schools that were, around the same size, that were around the same populations, English language learners and students with disabilities, around poverty, to kind of find districts so you can kind of say like, hey, what's going on there? What's going on there that's good? Why are their college going rates so much higher than mine? To really think about, again, the process that they're using to be successful in your schools. The school and district darts, so there's several different types of darts. I'll show you that next slide, exist in profiles. So again, right off of profiles, you can kind of look at the darts in that area. All the rest are Excel workbooks. So any quick questions around, I see one from Christine on Success at the high school. Christine, your question about what year's information, it depends. It's the latest information that we have available. So for example, we have college data from Leanne.
Actually, on the DART page, there's a file also that is called the Quick Reference Guide, and it will list the year, each indicator, the last year that was updated for each indicator. So that's a good probably document to look at if you do want to see what's the latest data that we have.
Right. So some data will be older data because that's what we have available. So we try to use whatever we have available and update our pieces. Any quick questions around Scott? Any comments on what the DART is? Because I'll give you more information on it. So again, there's different pieces. You have the school and district DART, and then we have what are called DART details. So DART details are kind of a deeper dive, laser focused, every other word I can use that is too commonly used, around different groups of kids and schools. So we have one that's around staffing and finance. That's a DART detail. One specific to English language learners. The intent of what our Success After High School DART was really to use all the existing information we have about secondary, meaning high school, and post-secondary education. We wanted to draw that connection between the 9-12 arena and the post-secondary arena. Again, the post-secondary arena is mostly defined as colleges and universities at this point. It was really designed so that anybody could use it. So Edwin Analytics, you have a kind of restriction. It's an on-ramp to a different highway with Edwin Analytics. It's a controlled access. With Success After High School, DART, all the DARTs are accessible to everyone. So my sister can look at this, your cousin, real estate agents, any of your parents, any of your CBOs that are really working on this information, researchers. So it's a great first place to look at kind of what's happening in schools. A lot of this is the stuff that you could put on, for example, this dashboard again, really plug and play. You can do the right type of filtering in the DART around race, ethnicity, around income, ELL, students with disabilities, to really look at the information in somewhat more detail. There's a link to the user guide. The user guide is also in the portal.
So Niall, I'm sorry, now that I figured out how to get off mute.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that the DART's going to have, especially the Success After High School, which we're going to look at in a second, that's amazing in the amount of data. How would we, so like given what I'm showing parents, right, or trying to show a general population, give an example of where we would go into Edwin to get some more detailed information.
In Edwin for more detailed information?
Yeah. What would Edwin? What's the kind of stuff in Edwin that we would want to look at if I'm a district to really more flesh it out?
Right. So a lot of times it depends on your district. There are some districts that really are focusing on, say, 4-year college going. That's, they have 90% of their kids going to college, and they really we want more kids to go to 4-year privates. And I'm not recommending that as an indicator. I'm just saying what I've heard districts looking for. They might be looking at how to, if you're looking at specific subgroups. So you might be looking at wanting to, increase your economically disadvantaged kids and SAT taking or SAT performance or completing math core. It really depends on what your district is doing. You might want to enroll more kids. We might want to have more kids that are persisting or even completing college. All that information can be found in Edwin. I like to call DART, and I apologize for this description, it's the gateway drug to Edwin. It allows you to have a real good overview of information that you want to dig deeper on. In some of our Edwin tools, you're able to go down all the way to the student level of information. So you can actually see a list of an individual student drill down if you have the right level of access, and see what courses that student took. On a district level, you might want to be able to aggregate and disaggregate that data to look at, wow, what teachers, and we can't do this in Edwin necessarily, well, kind of, but locally you can say, what teachers are really getting these African-American kids to enroll in college? Is there a cause and effect around what particular teacher is doing? So that's the real deep level that you can get in Edwin. DART is more of a surface strong, sorry.
It's a surface tool, but what you're doing is you're helping the community, and I'm thinking of educators too, you're helping them start asking questions. And so the deeper analysis is going to happen in Edwin, but what I think these kind of larger barometer points are going to do is help everyone realize there's a problem. There's a challenge. There's something we need to look at. And then again, looking at the source of it and planning around it, we've got to dig deeper. So let's move along, because I do want to get to the...
Right. And I have to say that's a great piece, though. We actually make you ask more questions. That's probably one of the most annoying parts of the work I do, is that, it's like, I'm not giving you any, well, why aren't you giving me any answers? What should I do? It's like, I don't know. It depends on your district. You need to start, it just helps you to ask the right questions. So before we jump into the tool, I want to give you kind of an overview of what's in the tool. And I think from Lourdes, thank you, Scott, for answering that question. Yes, we have lots of different things in here. Now, when we get in the tool, we'll really go through and show you this. But there's different tabs is the way it's organized. And one is high school indicators. So this really talks about kind of those traditional things that we talk about with high schools. Graduation rates of high school graduation rates, high school dropout rates. We have 4- and 5-year graduation rates in there. Suspension rates. Again, when we're talking about this behavior piece of success, that's how we can record it. And retention rates. And for those of you on the higher ed level, retention in K-12 is bad. Well, not always bad, but it means that kids are doing a grade twice. High school performance, we're talking about assessments. So we're talking about MCAS, SAT and AP tests, and participation in SAT and AP tests. And I'll show you that tab really quickly in a couple minutes as well. When we talk about program of study, we're talking about MICCR and AP coursework. We're talking about students passing all their 9th grade courses, students passing 12th grade in math and science, technology, engineering courses. So we're talking about we're trying to find some proxies here for students that are completing advanced coursework when we're looking at that piece, the kids that are going on beyond, kind of our traditional 3 years of math, 3 years of science type of thing. So we want to think about kids that are doing more to be more successful, and schools providing those services. And again, being able to filter by different groups of students is very important here. You might have one group of students that are doing very well, another group you're totally missing out on. And sometimes this is even in our so-called high-performing districts, where you'll have a particular population, usually students with disabilities, sometimes low-income kids that don't have the levels of success of the other kids, and those kids get hidden by the vast majority of kids that are doing well. The post-secondary outcomes is really talking about students enrolling in post-secondary education, students persisting in post-secondary, that means moving from freshman to sophomore years, the number of students enrolling in remedial coursework, which means they're taking college coursework at Massachusetts public colleges that is uncredited in that area, usually in math and English. So these are different indicators that we think are important. And then workforce development is kind of something that's in flux. We don't have a ton of career-oriented indicators that we collect outside of our career vocational technical education programming. We do report some of our connecting activities data, some of the internships that are reported through there, and workforce learning plan creation and completion, but we don't have a ton of information about career at this point. We put links in there to regional,
Yeah, I would say, as I look through it, I think this is one of the areas I'm hoping we can beef up around kind of the workforce development, especially around connecting activities, because I think it's obviously used a lot in the career tech ed area, but as you know, we're moving more and more to trying to help all youth have a sense, some kind of work-based activity through school. So the other thing I just wanted to say is on your post-secondary education outcomes, it also has completion of college as well, not just whether they're continuing.
And I'll show that in the screen. The thing of completion of college is that it takes so long, the data, that, and I'll show you a couple cool tools in which we look at that. So we do have completion in there as well, and I'll definitely highlight that as I look at the screen. So just some considerations. I always like to do like the yeah buts of this because I work with people that have some healthy skepticism about data. We know that people put great effort into this, and I think to your point just a second ago about the career piece, we need to make sure we get data for every student, or nearly every student when we're collecting this. So it takes a lot of work. We have 393 high schools that are reporting data in different fashions through different student information systems. We try to put it out there and kind of, as well as we can, report it. We will often report data that seems inaccurate, but it is, as we would call it, garbage in, garbage out, because we want it to be reported so districts realize what they're reporting to us. It's very difficult for us to do the auditing and figure out the 393 high schools, almost 400 districts that we have. So whenever you look at the data, you analyze it. Sometimes bad data is good because it helps you to understand something and understands that you have data missing. Always look for false positives, false negatives, and things of that nature. A lot of times it's keying errors, it's SASs, there's lots of different things. So whenever you see something on the DART that says that makes no sense, just bring that into your mind and say it might not be true. And again, they're a snapshot at one point in time. We do not have real-life data. We can't track kids with nanotechnology. So it's giving you a basic gauge of the overall condition of district or school. There could be great stuff happening in there in the last 6 months that you're never going to have in the DART. So that's basically the overview. And if take a couple questions as I figure out how to share my screen here.
Let's see. I think I'm going to do that. Now we're good.
All right, we're good. All right, so this is what the DART looks like, and I'm going to ask Leanne to jump in at any point because she is the actual architect. But again, I'm not. Oh, I got to see your chat too. I don't know how to see the chat. But again, we'd love to hear your questions. So I'm probably going to ask Livonia or somebody, one of you, to kind of, if you get chat questions, let me know and just interrupt me because I'm just looking at it full screen at this point. So here is the front screen, and you'll see that we just updated some of the data this month. And again, up top, you're going to see links to Leanne. You're going to see links to our other DART tools on that right upper side. There's also a couple of user guides both in Excel and Word, and also the table of contents. So you can kind of look at this in two different ways as you kind of negotiate the workbook. You can use the table of contents above, or you can, on the bottom, you can see kind of where those Excel tabs are that say context, high school indicators, things of that nature, to kind of navigate your way through here. You'll see here, I pre-chose this just because I was looking at the data. You can choose any high school up here that's in the Commonwealth that has enough data for us to report. And you can also compare it to a district as well. I picked two of our good friends that I thought might be on the call that we've worked with a lot around data, and specifically around dropout issues, ILPs, kind of two of what I think are stars around using data. I mean, Aaron might not say that, but I think they really are getting there, and they're really concerned about it, and they're really concerned about the kids as all we are. So here it's going to give you a list of your very basic information about Barnstable. These schools that are listed below are what we would consider comparables. So again, these are schools compared to Barnstable that are about the same size, about the same high-need students, economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, et cetera. It's never going to be perfect, but you'll see that these are the places that Barnstable would compare yourself to. And it gives you some basic information around enrollment, around some basic outcomes around MCAS. If you look a little bit to the right, it will give you some information about some basic post-secondary information. So here you talk about college enrollment, the persistent rate, and the remediation rate. So three kind of basic indicators. This gives you an idea of, like, if you just wanted to look at one shot, what do these high schools look like? And we'll dig in a little bit. The beauty of this is designed so if you have something that you really want to print out, you can print out, and it will print out equally onto pages so it won't run over into legal or anything like that. Leanne has done some really good work in making sure this fits onto one page. So that's the basic page. Any questions about that? I'm going to start really rolling through the tabs pretty quickly. Oh, I see some messages coming up. So Allison, I'm going to answer the economically disadvantaged question at the end just because it's a little bit confusing, or maybe during the session. I'll do it now. As you probably know, we switched from low income to economically disadvantaged as measuring poverty. It doesn't mean we have more or fewer poor kids. It's just changing of the measure. A lot of this had to do with the way we have the free lunch program worked in the community. It's a way that we can feed every student in the community. So it's getting food in the kids' bellies. It's doing good work around feeding kids. Kind of screws up the way we do data. And so we've moved to a way we're using economically disadvantaged, which is a higher indicator of students getting things like mass health, food stamps, foster kids in different pieces, and I'm not getting every one of them. I'll send out some information to this group around what economically disadvantaged looks like. So you're going to see fewer economically disadvantaged students versus our former low-income indicator. So real quickly, let me show you some of the tools. This first one is called context here. And again, if you look up top, it's always going to tell you what your school is and the school I chose to compare it to. If you look at select subgroup, right now we're looking at all students. We have a series of different subgroups that are here. Again, low income, economically disadvantaged. It depends on what year you're looking at. Students with disabilities, ELL, race, ethnicity, that you'll find there. If you have too few kids, the results may be what we call suppressed. So we always want to make sure that we're not identifying individual students in any of our data. The context piece is just giving you some very basic information around enrollment, stability, are you enrolled all year at the school, the school-to-counselor ratio. So we know it's about 250 to 1 is the recommended by ASCA, I think, Scott. So this gives you an idea of what it looks like from school counselor to school ratio. So this is something we really wanted school counselors to use this tool to figure it out. So we wanted to own the fact that there are different numbers and different uses of school counselors across districts. Let's get into the meat of it here. High school indicators. Some real important ones, like I'm pretty hype on attendance, just knowing the effect on student outcomes. So this allows you to look at attendance. And again, if you really look up here, if you really want to disaggregate it and you want to look at something like students with disabilities, you'll give you an idea of, are students with disabilities, going to school or not attending school at higher or lower rates. And this is going to be different in every school. It shows you kind of things, more pieces about attendance, so you want to look at the students who are absent 10 or more days each year. Again, this is going to make you ask more questions. It's like, why are all these students absent 10 or more days? Is it transportation? Is it weather? Has there been some illness? Is it in particular grades or particular areas? And then you're chronically absent, so these are kids that are absent basically 18 days or more a year, 10%. So this might be a student group that you might want to look at. If you look at this again as a gateway into some of our Edwin tools, if you have access to EWIS, this really lets you look at more detailed information and actually look at those students who may have been absent a certain number of days and maybe design interventions this way. When you're using a dashboard, you're never going to have that level of information, but for this purpose, it really gives you a chance to ask for the entire school community, to ask more questions. Again, we have some behavioral data in here. Right now it's measured through what we call our SSDR, Student School Discipline Report, Student Safety Discipline Report, and it tells you kind of percentages of students who are suspended out of school. Different schools might have you might be comparing yourself to a school that might not, as a rule, suspends kids out of school except for really severe offenses. So you always have to look at that as a data piece. There's some schools who really use in-school suspension as a way of looking at that data. Promotion rates, again, this is first-time ninth graders being promoted to 10th grade. And then we get to some of the things that I work most closely with, our dropout rates. Both these schools, you can see tremendous decreases in their dropout rates. I know that Fitchburg, for example, was illustrated by the commissioner as being a real leader in this last year, and you can see some, a lot fewer students are dropping out. An engagement indicator, this is kind of a tough indicator. Very few kids are actually re-engaged. These are students who have dropped out and have been reported as dropouts to the department and brought back to the school. I'm going to start moving a little quicker because I know I'm going to run out of time for the good stuff.
And I'm also, I'm thinking the high points too. And I just want to make sure Lourdes Rivera, one of our senior research fellows with the MICCR, asked about getting access to the actual stuff here. So you have the 18 mega or whatever megabytes piece there should be the Excel file in the file section, and at the very top was the link to this data as well. So if you want to be playing along while Nyal's doing this, you can certainly download that as well.
Right. Yeah, and it's a great thing. It's hard to email. It's a large file, so it's better just to load it onto your hard drive. Again, we're only updating this about 3 times a year, except when we screw something up and have to fix it. So it's it's going to be pretty static information. So that's basically what the high school indicators look like. I'm sorry, the basic indicators look like. So now we're going to move to program of study. MICCR is our recommended rigorous course of study. So again, here is a perfect example. I know Aaron's on the line, and we've talked about this a bit from Barnesville High School. You'll see a 0% MICCR completion. There can be a lot of different reasons for this piece. It could be kind of a misreport. It could be they're missing a particular piece of MICCR. But again, generally anytime you see a 0 or 100, I'm very skeptical that that's true data. But still information to look at. But again, you can see kind of information about math score completion. Again, this big one, this is my favorite indicator. Maybe I'll just do a highlight of all my favorites. This ninth grade passing, we know that ninth grade passing has a great deal to do with high school graduation. So, and this is passing all courses, academic and non-academic courses. For example, your non-cores, physical education, etc. So this means you're passing all. You'll see some huge growth in Fitchburg around that issue, probably due to a ninth grade academy that they were doing and being very cognizant of their 8th and 9th grade transition. A couple other course indicators really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just want to pause you a second. So Lori said another good question. This came up when Aaron from Marksville and I were going through their report as well. It's kind of what we're looking at, and Niall's switching a lot of windows, and what he's doing is very much it's on the bottom. You'll see the little pieces you can click on, and right now we're in program of study, and so that's how he's getting that data. Yep. So just wanted to.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So math core is reported through SIMS. The other pieces here, there's a system called SCS, which is Student Course Schedule Data, and this is basically a list of all the courses that students take during the school year, their grades, how long they were, did they pass, did they get credits, etc. So we have calculated a number of indicators here around, again, ninth grade passing, kids that are taking courses in 12th grade, for example, both in math and science. We know these are critical to the Massachusetts economy. Sometimes you're going to see these asterisks in the file, and that usually means that there's some bad data reported, and we decided to suppress it because it just looked very strange. So it's hard to do this because we have 393 high schools, and figuring out what our business rules for that can be sometimes confusing. Moving on to high school performance. And again, remember, you can always filter any of this data. This is the MCAS, so this is talking about 10th grade MCAS specifically. In our other tools, meaning those schools for school and district, you'll find PART, but high school at this point is all MCAS all the time, and these are specific to 10th grade tests in ELA and mathematics and science, technology, and engineering. So this is going to look at scores there, growth percentiles, and then we get into this whole point, and we decided in our committee that how are we going to report AP course taking. We want kids, there's been huge initiatives on kids taking more advanced coursework. So we looked at it in 3 different ways, and you might want to set, when you're looking at a dashboard, you might have a ton of kids that are enrolling in AP courses and not taking the test, or not scoring a 3 or above, which is usually looked at kind of a college equivalent piece. So this is a way you can look at longitudinally, what kind of progress are you making in all 3 of these areas? Again, the course taking plus the test taking and test passing. We also decided we wanted to break it down, and we know there's, and I apologize, I think there's 37 or 38 different AP courses. We bucketed it. We didn't want to list all 38 of them. There might be a lot of kids taking Latin Virgil or something of that nature. But we really broke it down into, kind of 6 critical areas. So we did English language arts, which includes all of, the composition and the other pieces, math and computer science, science, technology, engineering, and then the other folks around history and social science, foreign language, and arts. So if you're thinking about, posting something like this in a particular area, you want to increase the number of students who are taking mathematics AP courses, might be a great thing for your dashboard. Everyone's dashboard is going to look a little bit different. SAT, we reported in a different way. This is using the old SAT, meaning the pre-2016 SAT, but you can look at reading, math, and writing at this point, both the N, which we find very important, the number of students. You always want to think about the percentage of students who are actually taking the SAT. Places that have large numbers of kids taking SATs sometimes have lower SAT scores because they've chosen to really get more kids taking it because they know it can be an advantage when they're applying to 4-year schools. We also looked at a distribution chart.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to look at. Yeah, this is really interesting because now what you're talking about is, I was just saying that this is really exciting the way you profiled this because it lets us see the percentage of students that from a national perspective we would say are college and career ready. And it's the darker green and then the next level of green. Those are the students that are going to be able to be competitive for some of the more select colleges. Right. And I'm not saying I'm not judging that we should all get every student into select colleges, but what I do want to say is when you disaggregate the data, there should be more equality in terms of which students are qualifying at those levels. And so when we see large discrepancies, right, based on the different groups, then we can start to see where we might have some challenges.
Right. So the distribution, it's usually a normal distribution for SAT scores. So you can see here, say in Fitchburg, and just to give Fitchburg again, I like Fitchburg a lot, so I just think you say nice things about them. But they really have a lot of kids that they're testing on this. So they're testing kids that a lot of schools may not test, which, again, why you see so many kids who are below 400 here. It also gives those kids an indication of, hey, we need to really start working on these areas before you start applying to colleges. So I really love the way these are distributed. I think both of them can be useful, and it really depends on how you're trying to present the data within your dashboard. Really want to spend some time on this post-secondary outcomes piece, because this is the part that's most new to folks, and this really doesn't exist outside of this sphere, meaning how being reported by the department. So this is very exciting to us. This is very new to us. I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking on what we call the waterfall. The waterfall is a way of looking at leakage points throughout the student pipeline. We want to talk about kids who are entering all together. So everyone's entering in 9th grade in cohort 2003, which means that's their graduation class. We want to look at how many of them graduate within 5 years, how many of them enroll in college to immediate fall and persistently enroll. There are schools that have, say, if you have 100 kids entering in freshman year, you might have 3 or 4 who are persistently enrolling in college at the end of here. So it really kind of shows you some long-term effects of the work that you're doing. And again, you can always do that by filter it by specific subgroup as well. These waterfalls we create. They don't exist anywhere else as far as I know. And then this one, to Scott's point around completion, can show you kind of what the completion looks like. This goes back a long time, though, because you're talking about kids that entered in 2004, 2005, so 11 years ago. But how many of them are obtaining a degree in what we call time and a half, meaning within 6 years? That's any degree, that's associate or baccalaureate, or master's for that matter. So that gives you a kind of good indication of what are waterfalls. We find these to be very powerful as kind of the first thing you show people when you're talking about college readiness in particular.
Well, it's the most accessible. This was something that we saw at the Reach Higher meeting that they had in San Diego. Some of the other states were doing the same thing, using the waterfall method.
But not as good as us, Scott.
They're not as good as you because it's not as easily accessible. And I can actually take that data, and in less than 5 minutes, I have a PowerPoint ready to go. It's amazing that it's that easy to do. And it is quite powerful to see where are we losing our students. And then, of course, that's going to get you to Edwin and back into the deeper data. But just to have a gauge that we can jump around, it's amazing. I think what a great state we have. This is great.
So, Scott, I'm going to run through the rest of this. I know you have to leave in a couple minutes, so I want to run through this screen and then just to make sure I get your comments on this.
I will stay on the phone. I'll be right here.
So the other tool, this is, again, outside the waterfall. This is talking about degree completion and looking at it in a different manner. So you can use that piece. And some people use it in different ways. These are pretty exciting ones. And, again, we have these, again, to the student level in Edwin. But this gives you a kind of look at those students who are enrolling in post-secondary education within 16 months. Post-secondary education, for our purposes, is again defined as anyone who's in the National Student Clearinghouse. It will also capture students who are enrolled in certificate programs, mostly at our state community colleges as well, but the school has to offer an associate's degree at our baccalaureate to be National Student Clearinghouse. We are not capturing kids who, say, go to Barbizon, UTI, the trucking school, and things of that nature. So we're capturing kids that are in National Student Clearinghouse here, enrolling within 16 months. So it's capturing those kids that might take a gap year, might have work for a year before they're engaged. It's capturing all those kids. The next piece, and I know some districts are interested and some are not.
Niall, I'm going to just interrupt you for a second. So Ann Cole has just asked, by persistently enrolled in college, do you mean year 1 to year 2? And if not, what is that criteria?
Yep, I'll do that in 1 second when I get to that slide. Give me 1 second, I'll get to you, Ann. Nice to hear from you again, by the way, Ann. It's been a while. So this gives you an idea of kids that are going to 2 and to 4-year schools. To some schools, this is really important. They really want to increase the number of kids going on to 4-year schools. It just gives you a different way of looking at this information. Persistently enrolled, to my former colleague Ann's point, is the persistently enrolled for 2 years. So this is basically we found you in a freshman year and we found you in a second year in either the same institution or another institution. So if you went to UMass and then to Bunker Hill, or you went to Bunker Hill to Harvard, or you went to Bunker Hill to Bunker Hill, we will find you as persisting. So these are kids who were enrolled and existed in the National Student Clearinghouse file for a second year. Okay, good. Leanne is nodding at me, so it must be right. The next piece is around enrolling in remedial courses. Remedial courses are defined as those courses that have no college credit, yet you're paying money for them. So these are classes that are below college level for the most part. This measures only students who are Massachusetts public colleges. We know that students go to other schools and may not be academically prepared, but we only have information for those students who are in Massachusetts public. The idea is, and again, this is any remedial course. If you got into our Edwin Analytics tool, you could look at whether it's mathematics or English, and even with English reading or writing developmental. So that gives you some more information saying, hey, our kids that are going on to public colleges even prepared? And particularly if you have a high public college going rate, that can be really important information to look at.
Now, can I jump in on this?
Sure.
So the two data points from the perspective of the taxpayers, right, is are they completing college? Because we know that then our children we've invested in a school that's now helping them be successful. And the other is the remedial courses, because in effect what we're doing is we're paying twice.
Right.
Not only do we pay for it from the tax base, but now our students are having to take out student debt in order to take the same courses that they should have completed. It moves the conversation nationally to a question of competency rather than grades. And it hopefully will help our schools realize that it's not whether you got an A in algebra, it's whether you're going to pass the actiplacer. It's whether you're going to pass the kinds of initial tests you have to take in college that says you have those algebra skill sets. And so those are two of the more powerful pieces that have really immediate return on investment implications that people can understand.
Great. And I just switched the tab. It's completely right. I switched the tab over to low income. I just want to kind of note how many fewer students at Fitchburg High are taking developmental courses. So they've gone down to 37% from 69% 4 years ago.
That's
so
great.
They're doing something right around developmental course taking, with more students going on to public colleges. So that's just something to look at.
And I think, Nyal, I'm glad that you're throwing up Fitchburg, because as you look at the data, there's a lot of data points that someone would say, oh my gosh, there's a lot to work on. But what you're able to also showcase is where their work is actually showing tremendous amounts of gain. And so it's really a conversation about growth, not a question about where everything's going wrong. So I think
Yeah, so I think you're going to want to, I think we lost Scott again. I think you're really going to want to focus on, our programs are working well, so there's a program evaluation part to this as well. Livonia, are you there?
I'm still here.
Okay, I didn't know if we lost Scott. Real quickly, and I want to take Okay, so I just want to quickly, so that's the post-secondary outcomes, and again, tons of more information in Edwin Analytics around that piece. Career development, again, we do not have as much information about career development as we probably want to. We use this not only as a placeholder, but to really show the importance of what career development education might look like. We started out by really showing about these workforce investment boards. There are many school districts involved in our Connecting Activities Network and other districts and other initiatives that really work with their workforce investment boards. We really want people to have some information about what their workforce investment board is. We provided some information, what's available through our Connecting Activities program. Again, this is not all your internships, Barnstable, but it's those that have been logged through our Connecting Activities Network, and again, for the Cape and Islands and for the state. And we also, so again, using data that's available, students that are involved in Chapter 74 CVT programs by occupational cluster, and then a lot of links to kind of what information might be available about, labor market information, projections, things of that nature, to really kind of talk to kids about what jobs are available. Westfield is no longer WIP City. They used to produce more WIPs than anywhere in the country. That is dead for now. So we want to really have kids prepared for occupations that exist. Real quickly, too, I should have done this before, but when you go to more about this data, you'll always go into more information about where that data was taken from and what it's all about. So any of it, I'm going to flip over to Program of Study just to show you there. So if you want to look at the data, you can always click up and see, where did they pull this data from and what is it about? Because somebody in the room is always going to ask you that question. Where did you get this from? And you just say DART, and it'll just be like, no, what is it all about? So there's another piece in here that I'm not going to get into. It's kind of like the DART 102 part of this, and I encourage you to get there. It's called trend analysis. I'll send you to my colleague Leanne if you really want to. It allows you to compare yourself to many different districts around a specific indicator. So if you wanted, in my town, my city, if you wanted to look at the Middlesex League, you could list every school in the Middlesex League and compare attendance or something of that nature. So I'm not going to get into that too much because it's just a little bit too much detail, but I'd like to stop now and have Livonia take over and see if we have any questions or anything.
So Nyal, as you pause I was going to say, is the trend analysis, Nyal, that you hit on is an interesting area because I think districts are going to want to hold themselves accountable and comparative around school districts that have similar demographics, income levels, things like that. So it's something that I think the district will want to really dive into at some point.
Yeah, it's a great tool. It is a little bit more advanced just because you're looking at one indicator. So you really, when you're focusing on one indicator, you're going to dig down deep into their college enrollment. You want to compare yourself to your competitor, right? Whoever you play on Thanksgiving, you want to make sure that you're beating up on them and some specific indicators. That really is the way that works. It's a great tool. It's just a little bit more advanced, and sometimes I screw it up, and I don't want to do it live. So that's the real reason.
And I think that the great thing about this is it allows you to compare up to 10 organizations, like either high schools or districts. So if I'm a city of Boston, I may want you to look at all my high schools in one time. So this allows you to do that.
Right. And just quickly around Lourdes's question, you would download the new file. It exists statically, so it wouldn't update your current Excel file. You would just go to the new piece. We try to get that information out to people. How do we get that information out to people? Check back and see if it's the most recent file. That's the way it works.
Yeah, and we also have the direct updates document that lists all the the most recent updated indicators, which is available on that site.
Yeah, the most recent May updates were really around some post-secondary information, right? Yeah. So happy to take questions. Look at anything in particular.
And I'd be curious, is which data so far seems to resonate the most?
Yeah. From people, like, what do you think? I mean, for me, it's post-secondary just because it really didn't exist anywhere else before. Maybe it's just because I'm so familiar with most of this data.
And I think it's the cleanest, too. I mean, as you were talking about, a lot of the data we're depending on the schools, and anything can happen, in terms of putting the input in. But the National Student Clearinghouse does seem like it's a cleaner set to look at as well.
Yeah, the National Student Clearinghouse is clean, but it's interesting. And part of the work behind this is really matching up the kids to National Student Clearinghouse and making all that happen. So there's been some challenges around that. So it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be mistakes in there. I think there's National Student Clearinghouse about 97% or 97% of institutions. So we're capturing most kids, but not
not all.
Perfect.
But
we're not letting the perfect get in the way of the really, really good at this point.
And I guess
I'd also just like to interject.
Yep.
Sorry for that. I just want to interject that also, as you've noted, Aaron Eastman and Drew Goodwin are also on the line whose data have been represented today for further reflection about how this data kind of impacts the work that they're doing through the MICCR.
Great. Any comments?
Yeah, from Barnstable, I think the data for us when we took a look at it with you, Scott, and Livonia, it was pretty eye-opening and not in a good way. But the good side of it is that it gets us motivated to do more work to address the college and career readiness so that students will have success in college.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a lot of conversations going on our end here, and then I know the plan is to have you and Nyal come down and go over that data with the rest, the rest of the leadership team. John Clark had asked if he'd come down and present to the department heads so we can really push things forward.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think as we learn kind of what it is that the districts, how they're, and as you talked about your leadership team, once we find out what their questions are, it'll be easier to help support you in this effort to collect that data at the front end. Because we'll know over time we'll be able to help districts because we'll know a better understanding of what they're looking for. Andrew, what about on your end? Are you on the line as well? On mute, maybe? No? Okay.
We do have a question, though, and I think Niall's already moving towards it. So Allison Allen asked just to briefly review the waterfall once more, just for clarification on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, Allison, my old Cambridge buddy. So basically what it is, it's a group of kids who enter ninth grade together. So for example, looking at the one that is right up top here, in this ninth grade level here, you have, for example, in Barnstable, 418 kids who came in together. That's called a grad cohort. A grad cohort is who we anticipate is going to graduate in the class of 2013. From that, we add in students who move into the districts. We take out students who transfer somewhere else. Every other student, then we have the graduates. So in 5 years, we had 89% of those students at Barnstable High graduated from high school. So that's a 5-year graduation rate. This is the same group of kids that's moving along. It's one big canoe full of students that we're moving along through this system. So that's who graduates in 5 years. The next piece is how many of them enroll in college. Again, same kids. Of the 418 kids at Barnstable High, 65% of them, that cohort piece, enrolled in college. So this is not, your enrollment rate's always going to be higher because that's always based on graduates. This is based on the cohort model. And then 54%, which is state average, but pretty high, is those students who persisted from year 1 to 2 in college. So you're talking about Barnstable High, you have about 54% of those kids entering ninth grade who ended up at a freshman, sophomore year of college. Conversely, you can kind of see the other one. And again, the data gets older here on the second chart. If you want to talk about completion, you're talking about 32% of that original cohort of 513 that entered 2004-05. So that's your actual college completion rate based on a cohort versus based on graduates.
Right. And so the whole idea of a waterfall then is we're starting with 100% always, every school. They'll have different numbers, but we're all starting at 100%, and then we're able to see the droppage through time on those different areas, which I just think is easy to understand. Anyone can kind of get the sense of the picture pretty quickly. So it's really a nice, it really is a nice look.
And it's everybody's job along the way. It's the ninth grade teacher, it's the college counselor, it's the high school counselor, it's every teacher, it's community groups. It really helps us to look at, where those leakage points are.
Now, are we able to go into Edwin and look at the individual student around that data?
There's not a drill down specifically from, this tool to the Edwin list, but you can, yes, around NSC you can drill down to an individual student. It just doesn't draw down directly from a waterfall.
No, what I was thinking was is when we do an intervention, like we're doing that ninth grade academy.
Yep.
That when we're doing the ninth grade academy, wouldn't it be great to see how those particular students may be faring, right? And so if we can get data on that, or it might be a subgroup who took work-based learning or did internships, it'd be nice to see if there's shifts in some of these, in some of the waterfalls, so we know, are we having an impact?
Yeah, and what do you think? There's a way to get student lists. I'd have to think about that for a second, because through EWIS we could kind of see at least secondary results like graduation and things of that nature, but I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that. I don't want to answer it straight up, but it's something for me to think about. I'll get back to you.
I'm being the researcher now, so that's all.
I think you can, but I'm not 100% sure, because we can. Yeah, I think we can do it, but I wouldn't promise it. This is me being skeptical of my own ability.
Okay, no problem.
So we have a couple more comments coming in,
Sure.
both in questions, but also Andrew Goodwin is on the line and
good.
can just also provide feedback on paper. So the first question is related to the file, so just tap that one first. How many years of data is available on each updated Excel file?
5.
Do you mean the year of indicators? Typically we show 5-year trends. So that's, if we do have 5 years of data, we will show all 5 years. There are some exceptions, but that's typically what we report.
Yeah, if we don't own it or don't have it or it changes, then it's fewer. In Edwin, we usually have information going back to 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
So if you have access to Edwin, you can kind of cook up your own information as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Great.
And then I'll also turn it over to Drew, who is on the line.
Thank you. Talk very briefly. I think one of the things that has been particularly helpful about the availability of this data, at least in Pittsburgh, has been a move and an adjustment of the culture, I think, especially with the availability of the clearinghouse data, to actually look and compare some of the self-reported student data of plans of high school graduates, comparing to what would actually happen and where they would actually end up, which I think was a really sobering data set to understand that although students are on graduation day or thereabouts saying, yeah, I'm planning to go to this school or that school, the actual enrollment is very different than that number. And kind of following in that same vein, I think that the availability of the remediation data of students enrolled in remedial education has specifically really been something that we've been able to and work on reducing, because that is an area really a concern for students. We know that it's tied to success in post-secondary, so to be able to reduce those and to do some of that remediation while they're still in high school has been something that I think has really been born of the availability of this data.
So tell us, Andrew, how did that happen? How did you sit down, look at the data, and decide as a community that this is what we're going to focus on?
So, I mean, much of that comes from, here in Pittsburgh, I represent our partnership with Mount Wachusett Community College, and I think especially in regards to the remediation issues, that has been something that at community colleges we've been looking at for a number of years that I don't necessarily have as much at the K-12 level. We're getting them through. We're getting at the K-12 level the mindset that getting to pass the MCAS and getting them graduated means college readiness, and I think the availability of remediation data like that really starts to raise some alarm that maybe.
So a situation where you as a community partner was able to help them hone in on something that you guys have known for a long time has been a serious concern.
Indeed, and the availability of this type of data certainly has helped fuel that conversation. I think.
That's great. That's great.
So we are a little bit beyond the hour, but I do want to ensure that Emily Singer's question does get answered. Before I do that, I just want to let everyone know that this webinar will be recorded and then posted online. There will be comment functions on that online posting, so if you continue to have questions or want to reach out to us, please feel free to leave us a comment and we will get back to you. But Emily's question is most posed to Andrew and Aaron to just know a little bit about how districts are dealing with comparing prior and current data with low income and the changing definition.
So coming from a grant writing background, one of the things that we have used fairly successfully in our grant writing that people may want to look into is the Federal Department of Education uses a rule that's called the 1.6 multiplier for a number of different program eligibilities relating to the new usage of basically the direct certified low-income numbers. So I would advise if you are running into challenges in those data trends, you might look at it's in a number of different federal programs, IDEA, as well as the Federal School Lunch Program, and I believe the term they use is the 1.6 multiplier. So you might want to try Googling that and looking into some of the federal recommendations for use of that in modifying that data.
And from Barnstole's end, this is definitely a question that's better answered by Jennifer Clark, and I regret she wasn't able to be part of the webinar today, but I would have to defer to her on that. And like I said, she wasn't able to be on here today.
Not a problem. Well, Nyal, thank you so much. This was a great opportunity.
Just got a quick shout out to a couple of folks, if anyone's still on the line. I really want to thank, as far as getting this data in the hands of people who can use it is really important to us because it's not an exercise in being able to do it. So thanks to you all. Also thanks to Reach Higher, who's really helped to organize the initiative of getting this into school counselors, to School Counselors Association, Mass Schools Counselors Association, and MSSAA, Secondary Principals Association, have also been really leaders in data usage and pushing this out. And also to our own colleagues at Executive Office of Education, who have helped to really develop some really sophisticated Edwin analytics tools that have been helped us to support districts. So just wanted to put that little plug out there for all those folks.
Well, I'm glad you did. And I think, you started to say it because you're proud of the data, but, traveling around the country and I talk about what this data is and people really get frustrated they don't have the same access that we do here in the state. It's really exciting. And I think I'm hopeful, very hopeful, that as we keep getting the word out, it's going to have a transformative effect on a lot of our schools. So, Livonia, thank you for helping pull all this together and all the work that we do within all the MICCR team and putting all this together as well. So thank you all. And as Livonia said, we'll have the recording up soon, and we'll send an email out letting you know how to link to it.
All right, great.
Okay,
Thanks,
so,
guys.
all right, take care.